Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, you're on the Property Couch. Ben, welcome back.
Thanks, mate. Thanks very much. Love this time of the week.
You do, don't you? I've got something to open the batting for you.
Okay.
This is from one of our listeners all the way over in the US.
Oh, good.
Morning, gents. I'm one of your overseas expat listeners over in the US. I started listening after hearing about you on The Elephant in the Room, which is Veronica's podcast.
Yep.
Loving the podcast, even though you are highlighting some of our investing mistakes. But that aside, it is great listening, confirming some basic property investing principles that we can keep developing our knowledge to move our investing forward. But here's the point, Ben.
Yes.
Quick one. Just started listening to episode 251.
Okay.
Do you remember that? Sort of 9 episodes ago?
Probably not.
Just want to pose a question. Who was the last Collingwood player to win a Brownlow? Ben said Bucks.
Ah, yes.
How about Swanee in 2011,
yes,
Ben?
Yes.
Thought a dedicated Pie supporter would have been across this. Cheers, Matt.
Sorry, mate, you're absolutely right. Yes, it was Swanee. My bad.
There we go. So for those people who, for the majority of the listeners who haven't missed any of the footy banter, I just thought I'd sneak that one in.
Yes, we've missed it myself.
Hey, Ben, how about there's Black Friday stuff going on everywhere?
Yeah, I know. So it's Black Friday, but the sales have started a little bit earlier than...
Well, I think everyone's trying to get the jump.
But guess what? We've got some little surprises for our audience today.
I wanted to play
along. We're not
along.
forgetting them. We're not forgetting the community.
I wanted to play along. Good. So we're going to do some Black Friday activities of our own.
All right, so you have to stay tuned because we've got some offers.
No, it's right here, right now.
Oh, okay, good. Hit me.
Right here, right now. So, folks, we've hinted, we built it up that we were going to give some free stuff out.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is we've got a few boxes, Ben.
Yep.
Here in the office. In fact, not in the studio. It's just in the office.
Yep.
Of our first book.
Yep.
Over 17,000 copies sold.
Yep.
The Armchair Guide to Property Investing. You might remember it.
I do.
How to retire on $2,000
Yep.
a week.
I'll write it.
We're going to give it away for free, Ben.
Yep.
Not a digital copy.
What? Excuse me.
A free physical copy.
Did we talk about this?
We are now, aren't we? We're just sharing it with our community.
No, that's great.
So, folks, very simple.
How does it work?
Technically, at midnight, for those people listening on Thursday,
Yep.
I don't even know what the date is today, 20-something.
So you're not going to launch it from 3 p.m. today?
This will go to air at 3 p.m. today, Ben.
Yeah.
So
the people just have to wait till Friday, do they?
Well, no, here's the deal, right?
Right, okay.
For the community of people who are listening now,
yeah,
got a little secret.
Oh.
If they go to thearmchairguide.com.au,
thearmchairguide.com.au,
yeah, they'll actually be able to go and get the book now. They get a jump because we've only got limited copies, right?
Oh.
So if they go and get it now, they can go and suss it out. But
Okay.
for the rest of the folks, we'll send it out at midnight like everyone else does.
Yep. The email will go out
yes.
right to the community. Got it.
Yeah.
Now I'm on track. I'm all over this marketing stuff.
You want me to slow down a bit just for you?
You might have to.
So folks, our contribution to Black Friday is this.
Yep.
We've got some books in the office here.
Yep.
Until they run out, you can go and get a free copy. But here's the deal, Ben. So that we can give out more books,
yep.
we'll cover the book.
All right.
You guys just do the shipping handling. So it's thearmchairguide.com.au. Go and check it out. And there's a few little extra surprises, opportunity. People get some more growth through that.
Educational content. Good stuff.
Exactly. Another quick one. I am on radio this Saturday, Ben, for the Canberra folk.
Okay, yep.
Mix 106.3 with...
if you've got an app, you'll probably could listen to it as well.
That's right, with Cam and Renee.
Good
and
work.
We're talking spruikers. Community service announcement. We are
beautiful.
Talking about spruikers.
Love
it. And Ben, I just noticed that you might even want to play the Black Friday game.
Well, I mean, to all of those people who want to know what the capital growth story of their properties, their locations are going to be, we've got suburb growth. And tell you what, Bros, it is going off.
Yeah.
So people are really curious whether they own the property there or they're about to buy in a location. So we're getting owner-occupiers, but obviously getting a lot of investors using the tool. So we've put an enhancement into the tool, Bryce.
What's the
enhancement?
enhancement?
The feedback we had was like, I'd like to buy multiple reports. Mm-hmm. So, you're gonna give us any offers for buying? Yep, we are.
Okay.
So, a couple of things that I need to explain. You can now buy bulk reports.
Okay.
Okay. The bulk reports, you can buy up to a maximum of 15 at any one transaction.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when you do that, traditionally, you're going to, so for 2 or more reports, 10% off. For 3 to 5 reports, you're going to get 20% off the retail price, which is $19.95. For 6 to 9, you're going to get 30% off. And for those people who just want to load up and get a lot of information, they can get up to 35% off if they buy 10 to 15 reports. But for the Black Friday offer, Bryce, Black Friday, 30% off to start with.
All right.
So 30% off to start with, then you get the extra bonuses, discounts as you load up. You know, so you go to your cart, you put your suburb in and you add another suburb and you can just see the savings rack up. So go for gold because it ends. So here it starts effectively at 3 o'clock today.
Oh, so can I do that too? Oh, so that's at 3 o'clock
3
today,
o'clock today.
Right.
Yep, because I'm not doing an EDM. 3 o'clock today, right? And then it finishes at midnight. Well, actually not midnight. 11:59 on Friday night.
Ooh.
It's done. That's it. So you literally have
a window.
What is it? A very small window, just over 24 hours to get access to it.
We've got a window on our free giveaway. If we run out of books, that's it.
Yeah, good point.
And we've got up to 50,000 listeners a week, Ben, so I don't have that many books to give away.
Yeah, true, you've got to be quick on that one as well. So suburbgrowth.com.au, go in there and you'll see the bulk buy offer. You just straight to buy a report, put your suburb in, make sure. And a lot of people are like, well, some of the suburbs don't have a report available. That's because there wasn't enough data to do a reliable forecast. But if you want a reliable forecast in regards to future capital growth for 1, 2 and 3 years, for under $20, well, it's going to be even less, right? So, you know, if you were doing your numbers properly, Bryce, you can get these reports for about $9, just over $9 each. Cheap.
All right.
So, but you only have until 11:59 on Friday night, so get onto it.
Do you know that Virgin did that, where they make their flights now 23:59 rather than midnight?
Yep.
Because have you ever had a midnight flight and turned up one day late?
Yes.
I had some guests at my wedding that had a midnight flight, so they looked at the midnight, and you.
Yep. I've had people who've gone.
So the midnight on Friday should be 23:59 on Thursday.
Yes.
Because you're mentally thinking Thursday, but you turn up on the Friday.
Ah, good point.
And they go, "Sir, you've missed your flight." It's like, okay.
Talking about missing things, I didn't give the code.
Yes.
Black.
Yes.
You need to put the code in. It just goes, geez, you're organised, Ben. Yep, black. Just type in black for Black Friday and the code discount will come up.
I'm surprised you didn't make it black and white, mate.
Well, I thought about, mate. Just wanted it simple, right? Just a 5-letter word will do. That's enough. We're okay with that.
All right, well done.
Very good. Now, we've got lots to get onto today, Bryce.
We do. So my Mindset Minute theme today.
Very good.
All right, so Ben, in 2001,
yes,
I was getting a bit toey over in Perth, right? I'm thinking I'd studied at Murdoch University over there. I did an accounting degree. I wasn't that keen to be an accountant. I did a couple of things, worked at the casino. I was travelling around doing a few things. And then I got involved in property, Ben, from sort of 1998 right through to 2001. But through that experience, I was being exposed to the East Coast. It was kind of like the big brother, and I wanted to go and explore it, Ben.
Yep.
So around 2001, started getting a bit itchy feet. I'm thinking, should I broaden my horizons? Should I go over to the other side of the country? But I didn't know anyone, Ben.
Right.
So I got a bit sort of, there was the fear of the unknown. Like I want to go over to the big smoke, but is it going to work? And so long story short, Ben, I actually did take the punt. I moved over to Brisbane, and then I moved down to the Gold Coast, and then I eventually moved up and down the East Coast, right? But as a result of doing that, I've met a wonderful wife. I'm serving a mission with you, and I was here on the property. I've had a television career. I've had so many wonderful things happen, Ben. But it's because I felt the fear of the unknown, and I sort of pushed through it, right? Yeah. So Josh Kaufman. I've got this. Josh Kaufman wrote a book called The Personal MBA. I think it's brilliant.
Yes, I do too.
He goes, the fear of the unknown will always be with you, Ben, no matter what you do. Hence me, Perth 2001.
Yep.
That's comforting in a way. If there's nothing you can do to change it, there's no reason to let it stop you. So
I like that.
You like that? So the discomfort will be there, folks. So whether it's in the context of buying investment property, whether it's your New Year's resolution, whether it's you're going to move from one side of the country to the other, move overseas, the fear of the unknown will always be with you no matter what you do. That's comforting. So there's nothing you do to change it. There's no reason to let it stop you.
Beautiful. Love it.
Hey Ben, let's talk picker.
Well, we are going to talk picker because we're talking about what's happening in regards to, and this is I told you this theme is coming. For those of you who have been listening for a while, you'll know that there is an agenda here from our regulators and from our governments to make it more difficult for us property investors. No different in regards to the Queensland Labor government at the moment. They sent out a media release at the end of September there talking about reforms to the Tenancy Act. So they are also on this agenda. So the National Tenancy Survey released jointly in 2017 by Choice, the National Shelter and National Association for Tenants organisation reported a range of concerns for tenants.
Yes.
So they led this media release or media statement with these concerns, and I want to address them now because I'm also highly concerned about some of the proposals in their Reform Act for Tenancy Reform in Queensland. All right, 62% of tenants feel they can't ask for change. Okay, that's pretty high. 50% fear being blacklisted on a tenancy database.
Nothing to fear if you don't do anything wrong, Ben.
I would have thought so. And if you're going to ask me if I fear that, well, tell me what does it do? Well, it means it's very difficult to. Well, I fear that. So of course I'm going to say but I think if you've got nothing wrong to hide there. 21% said they waited more than 7 days for urgent repairs. That is unsatisfactory.
It's a challenge, yep.
That is unsatisfactory. So 1 in 5, not good enough for those property managers or the owners of those properties. That is not good enough.
Nope.
20% have had maintenance issues.
Sure.
Okay, well, true, there's things that need to be fixed. So how quickly they're fixed is obviously, something that's an obligation for the owner of the property to get that sorted out with the property manager as well. And 8% live in a home in need of urgent repairs.
Not good enough.
No, not good enough again. So if you are a landlord, property owner, and your property is not fit for tenancy, or there are some repairs that need to be carried out, you've got an obligation to do that.
Don't be a slumlord.
No problem at all. So now this Labor government here in Queensland is talking about open door policy for rental reform, consultation program being conducted. This is where I get a little bit sort of, really? Okay, by the Department of Housing and Public Works.
Yep,
big tick.
Yep.
That's their gig.
Yep.
Falls into their program with the Residential Tenancy Authority.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. And where's the?
Hang on a second, I'm just reading through here to make sure that
Property Owners Corporation? Where's Picker? Where's the voice of the owner of the property and the landlord? Well, there isn't one. And their aim is to ensure that Residential Tenancy and Rooming Accommodation Act of 2008 provides better protection for tenants and property owners and increases stability in the rental market. Stability for whom?
Yes.
For the tenant or for the property owner? Now, so I thought, okay, well, let's have a look at what are some of the proposals in there. Now, no change here. They're reading from what I would call the new playbook,
yes,
which is rolling around the country at the moment. So the proposed reforms include the loss of a landlord's right to refuse pets.
Okay.
The introduction of tenants' rights to make modifications to a rental property without the landlord's consent. Okay, so
interesting.
More detail there. Happy for picture frames on walls, not happy for backyards to be concreted. And the introduction of minimum housing standard requirements for rental properties and inclusions to meet prescribed standards and to be in a certain state of repair. So I don't mind that one, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Like, coming back to 8% of properties need urgent repairs. You don't want to be a slumlord. So I don't mind the idea that the property has to be tidied up for rent. So in other words is you take the rental as is. The property needs to be safe, but it doesn't have to be flashy. Because obviously
on that too, Ben, it's It's another point that's often hidden around being have good asset selection, because sometimes people actually don't have good asset selection. They hold a number of properties. They are reeling financially themselves. They might be in a negative equity situation.
Correct.
And they just do not have cash flow to fix issues that are coming up.
Yep.
But no one's we're talking about not being ultimately a conscious slumlord.
Correct. If you're letting that property out in its unfit state, we don't like that idea. All right, but now the big one, mate.
Yep.
And this is massive. The proposed abolishment of the landlord's right to not renew a tenancy agreement at the end of its agreed term.
Keyword there was not renew.
Not renew. So what do you need a term agreement if basically the tenant can stay? So why would I even sign a 12-month or a 2-year term agreement or a 6-month term agreement with a tenant if it doesn't mean anything? Right, so let's think about that. Effectively, it means that owners will no longer be able to end a tenancy without a valid reason. So in terms of what that looked like, in the past, we used to be able to have without ground terminations or evictions, right? So, but after the agreement, now we've got to be very clear here. The reason why you sign a lease agreement is it has a term, right? And that term says inside the next 12 months, you've got the right to rent this property.
Peaceful enjoyment of the property.
Peaceful enjoyment of the property, right? And that's fine. But in terms of this one here, the lists of reasons will be controlled by the government. So there'll be a law that will basically have. So in practice, this will allow tenants to remain in a tenancy indefinitely, as long as they want, basically, and the landlord can establish a reason prescribed by law. So if the reason is, well, what are they? I'm confused. So what does this mean? Does that mean if the reason is, well, I want a better tenant? Well, that's no. So I mentioned this probably a while back, but in Italy, in the way in which basically the tenant gets in a property and there's so much power of the tenants in that particular country, they stay there until they die. Right? So now, as a property investor, I'm in the business of investing. I want to provide wonderful accommodation for the people who live in there and make sure it's enjoyed. But I also go with the view in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that I spend that the government doesn't have to spend, because it'll break state government's purses if they were to provide more and more government and social housing. So we provide that accommodation, and I'm sort of like, well, but my view is if I do my research well and I find an area that's going to gentrify and it's going to move in value, that I potentially, should be able to also enjoy the benefits of capital growth, and also based on an open market, which I thought Australia was, for supply and demand. If the demand for that accommodation went up, I should be able to charge a little bit more for that rent. Now, and I shouldn't necessarily be governed by what that laws are. Now, so effectively what we're looking at here is maybe social policy starting to creep in terms of residential rental property. And my concern is on lots of levels. One is how much consultation are they having with us, the actual property owner? Because there's no peak body price. We're trying to set one up. It's called Picker, right? We've got close to 3,000 committed members. We need to move the dial on that. So this is a huge shout out to all the people who own investment properties in Queensland, that if you're not a member of Picker, we need your $5.
Yep.
We need that $5 because the team up there, the State Council, are actively putting a submission in as part of this consultation process. And we want a seat at the table. This is what we've been saying. If basically we're not organised and we're not mobilised, the reality is that the tenancy associations across the country are government funded, right? So they're getting their funds from government, and they're allowed to then, obviously, they've got an operation, they've got administration, they do all these reports, and they have a big ear to government. Property investors haven't got that ear yet. So that's why it's vitally important anywhere around the country, 2.5 million property investors out there, we need you to become a member, because this type of policy is coming after you. Negative gearing's still not been completely abolished as a policy idea from Labor, nor is the capital gains tax stuff. So that's going to come around again. And especially if property prices are going higher, there's going to be an affordability argument, and then they're going to prey to the millennial voter. So this is the sort of stuff that we need to move the dial on.
Because you have got two agendas too at Picker, don't you? One, you want to maintain control of the asset, but you also still want to protect the marginalised.
Yep.
And you get that the agenda of some of these things are to protect the marginalised, but it's making sure that you still have control of the asset that you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars acquiring.
Correct. So, because I can tell you, and we've said this before, the direct consequences of these types of reforms, because I'm very open, there's been a long time since we've had reform in Queensland, so I think there is about striking the right balance. But again, not when the voice is so strong on one side, you're not going to get that right balance. Okay, so here's the issue that I have. The direct consequences are these. this is going to be the hardest job interview of all time to select a tenant. And so that tenant is going to have to be squeaky clean, right?
And if you think that's lip service, that's actually conversations with real property managers who are off air saying these are the things that we would need to do to overcome and protect their client, which is the landlord.
We're going to be looking at things like the cars they're driving, how they present their clothes. I mean, it's really sad in terms of it, but that's one of the direct consequences.
It's going to be ironic. The thing they're trying to protect is discrimination and marginalisation. It's going to create it.
So what does that mean? Is that those people are going to be unsuccessful in getting into those properties because the landlord, the owner, is going to be fearful that they'll never be able to get them out, right, under a silly policy like this. So we think it's dangerous. Now that's the direct consequences. The indirect consequences are real and they have an economic cost. Things like these unintended consequences include, well, if that becomes too difficult to invest, I'm just not going to invest. So there'll be less investors coming into the market, and people might say, that's a positive consequence. Well, no, because less investors means less stocks built, less construction, less development.
Less supply.
So less supply. And so when there's less supply, it means that property prices will go higher because our population is not dying off. In fact, it's growing, and it's tipped to grow significantly over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. So we'll see higher prices, not just for investors, but also owner-occupiers. I mean, we play in an owner-occupied market. We represent roughly 30 to 32% of the overall market. And what would that mean for less supply, Bryce? What does that mean for renters?
They're going to pay a bit more.
They're going to pay a bit more. Basically, rents will increase, and it's already been acknowledged. Now, the model that the Labor government in Queensland are saying is around 5%. I would totally disagree. It's going to be significantly more than that. As these costs start to flow through, high demand, low supply, prices go up. So please listen to our submissions. Read our submissions carefully. Yep, we may not be as big as the tenancy associations or have as loud a voice as them at the moment, but our concerns are real concerns, and they are concerns based on the fact that, yes, we want our tenants to be delighted with living in the accommodation that we provide, but also the fact that we also want to have the rights to control the asset that we've bought because it is part of our future plans to build wealth and retire comfortably. So there is, it's never as good as it seems, never as bad as it seems. The answer is somewhere in the middle, and we're open-minded to some reform, but when it comes to crazy reform like this, we're going to put our foot down and say, we think it's ludicrous to be able to do that. So that's what's happening in Queensland. So please join PICA, pica.asn.au, $5 for 1 year, $20 for 5 years. We love to have your name on that database because we're there supporting you. We're getting behind you. We're rallying on your behalf. Remember, it's for property investors, run by property investors.
Yeah, okay, man. So, folks, hopefully that encourages you to go to that website and become a member. I'm a member, you're a member, everyone's around here is a member. We want to have that voice. So, all right, today is Q&A day,
Q&A.
Ben. Before we kick off our summer series, Ben, so it's our last one for November.
Yes.
Next week is December.
Summer series.
Summer series. Now, Ben, you always
What's happening in the summer series, Bryce?
You always sign off every week by saying, knowledge is empowering,
yes,
but only if you act on it. And I've got a bit to add to that later on today after you've done your Did You Know, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
But we thought what we observed in last year's summer series is a lot of our listeners, rightly so, they take time off.
Yep.
They're changing their state. They've got a line in the water. They're overseas travelling. They're spending time with their family. So they might not be going through their normal routine of in the train, at the gym, listening to the podcast. So I just want to encourage folks what they can expect over the summer series because we've got a theme.
Yes.
And you say knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. We've actually got a theme where all of the guests that we've got are people who have acted on it. Mm-hmm. They're actually going to sort of get all the principles that they've used and then tell our listeners how they've used it so that you can actually say, all right, over summer, I might want to have a New Year's resolution, or I want to improve my situation in 2020, where you can actually listen to people who've actually done it. And we're super excited about that, which is really
a couple of world experts too, Bryce, in a couple of little certain categories, which I'm very excited about.
Well, Ben, I'm glad you said that because we're going to kick it off next week and we're going to set it up in a way that people know that acting on it makes a difference. So we have got James Clear.
Yes, the one you've been very excited about getting on, Bryce.
I've been very excited, all the way from New York.
Yeah.
On it. And Let's just say you do not, and we've pre-recorded it, Ben.
Yeah.
We've already done the interview. You and I said, that's in the top 2-3 interviews we've ever done.
I was taking notes everywhere on that
folks,
podcast, so there you go.
I just want to say to you, we're going to launch the summer series next week on the 5th of December. It is going to be an epic start, and you do not want to miss next week.
Very good.
You do not want to miss next week. So folks, tune in for that. Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. We're going to showcase the stories of acting on it. All right, today's first Q&A, Ben.
Yes, what have we got?
Is from Brad. Hi guys, awesome podcast, very informative. My wife and myself are in a bit of a unique position. We currently have a house on a family farm we pay minimal rent for. We recently bought our first home, which we are living in, due to first home buyers scheme, and we'll turn it into our investment property in February. So my question is, how long until we buy our next property? How much should we look at spending? And how do you set up the next investment as in principal? I think it says as in principal or principal and interest. I think it should be interest only or
Potentially.
Potentially.
Look, Brad, lots of questions here. Very difficult for us to answer because we don't know future plans around kids and those cash flow fluctuations that are going to occur. I would say to anyone, more broadly speaking, you should always invest in property when your cash flow allows, okay, and hold it for the long term.
Give us a formula, Ben.
So that is how we do it, Bryce. But I'll give you a couple of little tips, little back of envelope ways in which you can do this. So in theory, what's happening here is you're trying to work out your surplus cash flow.
Yep.
So you have your surplus cash flow, and by way of example, let's say that's $2,000 per month, Bryce. So we put in the $2,000 a month, right?
Yep.
Now, I'm going to do it really simple for interest only because the principal and interest is a little bit more of a difficult calculation. This one's pretty simple, right? All you then do is you times that by 12 for 12 months, Bryce.
$24,000.
$24,000 if that is available surplus to service the mortgage. Now, remembering, I haven't even factored in the rent you're going to get, right? So if you would add the rent to that as well. So the annualised rent to that figure. Now, once you know what that number is, just simply, I wouldn't do it in today's interest rates because they're too low, all right? But interest only, I would use 6.5%. So I'd simply divide 24,000 by 6.5%, and I come up with around 368,000. So that's the borrowing power. That's a really rough way in terms of what I can comfortably afford to borrow if I went interest only. Now, ultimately, if you want to go principal interest, your commitments are going to be higher than that. But remember, I haven't added the rental income. Now, I would also make a little tip in terms of the formula. So in terms of adding, I would do gross rental income, okay? But then I would do an occupancy percentage. And if you want to be really conservative, if you did a 90% occupancy, it just means that the property's going to be vacant for up to 5 weeks of every year. That's a good start in terms of doing those calculations. Of course, there are plenty of calculators on websites that you can put these numbers into and you can work out your borrowing capacity.
But we want to teach people on how to do it themselves.
Correct. If you're doing it that way, of course, we would also say if you get professional advice, those numbers will be sharpened and you would probably get a more reliable figure in terms of what you're doing. So don't discount the idea of working with a professional to do that cash flow modelling for you and to give you more insights, because once you have those insights, you would more likely to buy at the most appropriate level for your household circumstances. But that's how you do it, Brad.
Very good. Let's recap, Ben, because at the highest level, we'd say get a plan, because then you know what you're working towards. But the next lay down, you said when cash flow allows, then you work out your surplus monthly cash flow, you reverse engineer that at 6.5% interest only, gives you a borrowing capacity. And the final thing I would say
Don't
is...
forget to add the rent. Sorry, my bad.
Add the rent with the vacancy,
surplus,
right?
Yep.
But then also just do an equity release reverse engineer as well, because once you've worked that out, then you realise how much equity do I need to be able to do that, and then you work out if you've got that. So there's a couple of little scratch on the back of a napkin idea for you there, Brad. So hopefully that's helped. Great question. Thanks for sending it through. Got another one here from Stephen. Hi, just wondering what makes a cash flow property, if you could explain. Thanks, all totally addicted to the podcast. Great question, Stephen. I actually think there's a couple of categories here. I always think of it in terms of you can either negatively gear property or positively gear property. Negative gearing means that the cash outlays are greater than the cash inflow, therefore it's negative.
Correct.
And then you're borrowing, therefore it's gearing, hence the term negative gearing. But you can have two outcomes when you're negative gearing in my mind, Ben.
Yep.
You can have negative gearing with negative cash flow, which means I've got my expenses greater than my income.
Yep.
Plus, when I throw into the mix my tax return, I still have negative cash flow.
Yes.
That's one scenario.
Yep, that's the classic scenario.
Classic scenario.
Yep.
Or the second scenario is when I first got involved in 1998 was this one, Ben.
Yep.
Was negative gearing where your cash outflows were greater than your cash inflows.
Yes.
However, once I got a tax refund back from my non-cash deductions, depreciation.
Yeah, the depreciation piece.
Once I received my tax refund, I was actually negative gearing, but I had positive cash flow. And we were finding we were $10, $17, $22 positive all the time. So that's the negative gearing scenario.
Yes.
And then you just have positively gearing, which is the opposite of negative gearing, Ben. The expenses related to the investment is actually less than the income that you've got from the investment. Therefore, there is a surplus straight away.
Correct.
Therefore, it is positively geared. So negative geared with two outcomes, negative cash flow or positive cash flow, or positive geared, which has the positive cash flow.
So in rounding that out, you get a tax advantage, obviously, because if that's overall a loss, then that's going to be offset against the interest that you've paid, and so you'll get a higher tax refund. Okay, that's the negative. But it's only a moment in time, Bryce. We've talked about that extensively in terms of over time we want all of our properties to turn positive. So if you do have a positive cash flow property, you're going to be paying a bit of tax on it. But that's okay. At the end of the day, it's good to be paying tax because it means you're earning money. And if you're earning money and you're also paying your way, and you can self-fund your retirement but also give a bit of money for the tax man, that helps the Australian society improve. And I think it's a win-win for all concerned.
So Steve says, what makes a cash flow property? We always talk about growth assets, balanced assets, and cash flow, yielding cash cows.
Yes.
It's the cash cows where there's that surplus cash flow, which we'll use to retire out the debt.
Yeah, they're usually higher yielding properties, and there's different types of properties you can buy there. The most notable ones are usually in regional areas or tourism locations where the audience is transient, and so there's a bigger percentage. Mining towns is another example where the tenants are more transient, and so there's a premium for that opportunity. Also, some people might be thinking or considering things like holiday letting properties or Airbnb type of opportunities. Sort of managed properties where you basically have a person coming into the property on a short-term basis. Now, they sound great, but we're also very cautious of some of those types of properties where you do have, these holiday letting and these sort of management type of properties. They are very expensive to run, and usually even though they yield really highly, once you pay out all your costs, there's not much left over, and they don't have as good capital growth because there's not a big demand for them. The only demand is other investors. So you always want to be buying properties that have owner-occupier appeal.
And it comes from a self-assessment too, doesn't it? Am I an active investor or am I a passive investor?
Yep.
Because some of those things you just talked about
Service departments,
active investors. So, Stephen, hopefully that helps. What makes a cash flow property? Hopefully that gives you a framework to overlay. Hey, the next one is from Scott, Ben. G'day, property gurus. Love your work. For the case that we are holding multiple investment-grade properties, have a strong cash buffer, and they are cash flow positive, but not enough to fully live off.
Yep.
Is a hold strategy and living off the capital growth a possible retirement strategy? Of course, it's important that they are growing at a faster rate than our living expenses, but can this strategy work long-term in retirement? The big pro for me is that it maximises the value of the inheritance which we'll leave to the kids. What are the watch-outs for this strategy? Keep up the great work and go Pies.
Go Pies. Thanks, Scott.
Scott.
Well, now you've got me attention, go Pies. So, Scott, there are a couple of things going on here. Firstly, even though, we don't know enough about your age profile, so in terms of how long before your actual living income, your working income finishes. Once we know how much your working income has got to last, we're going to then be able to see exactly how far you can retire that debt and just basically then see how much positive cash flow is generating off that property. Because there is a tipping point. In terms of once you do model this in a sophisticated way and you look at a global portfolio, there is a tipping point whereby the properties do start paying for themselves and they start generating enough income to keep retiring the debt. Now also, obviously when you hit retirement, you will have access to your super. That will also be a consideration. Now I can't give you any advice around that in terms of how you may use that super. you would need to speak to a
Suitably
qualified
qualified
financial planner. But it is an interesting story here. Like I love stories like the clue for me is what he said in terms of the big pro is that it maximises the value of the inheritance. So it does if you can retain and hold on to those properties.
Yeah.
So some people might take out, by way of example, before they retire, just a $100,000 line of credit. And that's the sort of play money that they're going to be using, as opposed to living off the equity in the property and incurring interest on interest charges, Bryce, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the strategy that he's described is the strategy that I originally went into property investing to do and pursue.
Yep.
Where I've now sort of pivoted to the fact that it's about getting the cash flow and the retiring out the debt.
Yep.
Because really what it's doing is debt servicing debt. And the word Ponzi scheme came into my head. I'm not saying it's a Ponzi scheme, but what happens with a Ponzi scheme is you keep on relying on the next person coming to fund the decisions that you've done.
Yep.
And the reason I use that as an analogy is because this strategy relies on still being able to access more equity growing over time to keep funding.
Correct.
So it works for as long as you can continue to get access to the capital. But if you've just gone through an environment that we've been through in the last 3 or 4 years where the lending environment was tough, that's when it starts to implode on you because you've set up a scenario where you're debt servicing debt, relying to fund your lifestyle.
Yeah.
But if you can't get access to the debt, then it's a massive panic because you have now got a big debt that you've got to service, which you were relying on further debt to service as well as fund your lifestyle. And I've seen people do this. It can be done. There's people in Australia who are actually doing it, Ben, but I don't see it on bulk. I see it as an outlier more than a consistently strong strategy.
Correct. So just like we were talking about, that there's a tipping point where you start to really retire debt quicker and quicker, and it just starts to abolish that out. There is also a reverse tipping point.
Yes.
We call it the point of no return.
Yes.
Whereby the interest on interest charge, the debt on debt servicing, is getting so big, and this is obviously what happens when we are talking about credit card debt and things like that, where basically the money you're generating is just not enough to it's the debt cycle, right? So we're very apprehensive of general people, unsophisticated people using this type of strategy for retirement. So it might be the case, Scott, that once you did your models and you got some advice on that you can sustain yourself for the next 5 to 7 years before you want to start accessing more income, and then you might sell one property, and then that one property might do enough to retire the rest out. So it is about modelling both scenarios and feeling comfortable about those based on the future capital growth forecasts of those particular assets and the long-term viability, because debt on debt servicing does rely on consistent long-term capital growth.
It does.
And interest rates
and
remaining pretty low on a bit of and no legacy. No past, normally you've got to sell those assets and there's not much left over.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Scott says the big pro for me is that it maximises the value of the inheritance which we'll leave to the kids.
Yep.
I'd actually want to encourage the dialogue change to you'd want to maximise the equity, not the value, and maximise the cash flow, not the value. Because by way of example, what if you had $10 million worth of assets and $7 million worth of debt, which wasn't retired, so $3 million net, or you had $3 million worth of assets and no debt?
Yeah.
So on paper, you've got the same amount of equity, but you've got better cash flow.
Correct.
And you don't have the kids haven't inherited $7 million worth of debt.
Love it.
So it's really about maximising equity and cash flow rather than maximising the value.
We're a big buy hold fan. If there's a couple left, if you have to sell one, you really, and that buys you time. So when we do have to do models for our clients, whereby we just don't hit that tipping point where the properties are going to completely retire the debt out, what we do is when we get our cash buffer level to $100,000, that's the trigger to forecast the sale of one of those assets. And usually it's obviously the worst performing, but there's still some equity or capital gain that we're going to get. So that cash flows us up again, and that might trade us for the next 5 or 6 years, and then that's enough. And then all of a sudden we get access to super, and then all of a sudden there we go. The cash flows are going to accommodate us for the 100,000 passive income that we want to have in retirement, or whatever that figure is for each of the different households. So that's how it works. But nice question, Scott.
Very good. Hey, last one here, Ben, is from Melanie. It's got a mouthful. I think it's worth reading out though, because there's a lot. Hi Bryce and Ben, thank you for the fantastic informative podcast. I listen to it a few times a week and I'm learning so much.
Right.
I am a 36-year-old woman and have a question regarding buying an investment property now or a family home in 3 to 4 years. I have $115,000 saved for a deposit. Great effort. I am currently on maternity leave with my first baby and will return to work 3 days per week from March 2020, earning around $66,000 per annum total, in brackets. That is not pro rata. I anticipate that I'll stay 3 to 4 days per week at 66 to 88K per annum total, until we hopefully fall pregnant with a second baby in 2021. All of this means I will have part-time and maternity leave income until around 2023, Ben, when I'll likely return to full-time work, earning around $115,000 per annum. I've wanted to get into the property market for ages, but waited until I met a partner so we could consolidate our savings and buy a family home. And in brackets, and this only happened in the last 2 years. As it turns out, my partner works freelance and has not been able to make enough to save for a deposit. So the responsibility for that is with me at the moment. We obviously hope that his earning capacity will improve. At the moment, he makes ends meet with around $30,000 per annum. We currently rent in the inner city, but would like to buy a family home in a regional area within a commutable distance to the city, as it is more affordable, in brackets, medium house price $650K, and offers a better quality of life for our family. With my work commitments, we don't see ourselves moving out of the city until after we have baby number 2, in brackets, so in 2 to 3 years. My question is this, Ben. Given that we don't plan to move out of the city for 2 to 3 years, should we keep saving during that time and then buy our family home in the regional area? Or should we consider buying a 2-bedroom unit in the area we are currently living, in brackets, at around $500K, initially to live in, and then as an investment property? They put to save on stamp duty, in brackets, 2-bed. I feel anxious about waiting another 3 years to get into the market, as prices will continue to increase, in brackets, albeit at a slower pace in the regional area. And at 36 years of age, I'm already leaving it very late to start out. Additionally, if we were to buy a unit in the city, would we be able to use that as equity in buying a family home in 3 years' time? Or would that mean we couldn't get another loan? I know that our borrowing power will not be strong with me only working part-time and my partner's low income. I know you can't give specific financial advice, but I thought this must be a common dilemma with the restrictions of maternity leave income bumping up against the pressures and timing of getting a foot on the property ladder. Thanks in advance for any insights you can offer, Sarah. P.S. Are you able to let me know if and when you answer this question? So a little shout out to you, Stiggy. I'd hate to miss it. Ben.
Very good. So firstly, 36 years of age, you're not leaving it too late.
No.
Now, I mean, I've got to sort of premise this with the fact that millennials are going to live a long, long time.
Yes.
Now, there is still an expectation that they think that retiring at 60 to 65 is still fair. Doesn't have to be. You're going to be fit and healthy until into your 70s, right? Now, that might sound ridiculous, but it's not. You're going to be working 40 years for your future. And if your first 10 years of working, so 25 to 35, were fun years, good for you. Ticked a lot of boxes, got a lot of stuff done on the bucket list, doing all those great things. What a great life.
Yeah.
And then getting serious when you need to get serious. And this is what's happening with Sarah. She's getting serious now. So, summary, I got $115,000 in a deposit. This is very much the dilemma of a lot of people, Bryce. We see these types of scenario models in regards to what it looks like. So, the other key thing that we've also got is, even though she's on maternity leave, she's got consistent income. So she's got good income coming in. The husband hasn't. Now, we've just said it earlier in the podcast, when do I invest in property? When the income is consistent, reliable, job security is there, and we can afford it for the long term. The big question here is, do we think that we can recycle a property or even turn it into an investment property inside 3 years? Now, if this was a scenario where the household had the big rock in the jar and they had their owner-occupied home, and they just wanted to get an investment property, I'd say go for it.
Yeah.
I'd have no problems in them going for an investment property. The big clue here for me potentially about any type of household is you've got to focus on the big rocks in the jar first, because if they were to execute on an investment property now, and let's say it did nothing, in 3 years' time it was still worth what they paid for it, and they wanted to turn it to get the rental income coming on, all of a sudden their money is sucked up. There is no deposit money to buy that regional property, that home that they can commute from to the big city. So they've got a dilemma now.
Yeah, they can't get what they want.
No,
They
and
scratch the itch.
so all of a sudden they're thinking, okay, well I saved on stamp duty but I'm stuffed. So they then have to pay the price of getting out of the market and then getting back into the market. So my conservative nature says to me, that's not a strategy that I would adopt. I'd have to do some more inquiry, but my initial thinking is I wouldn't do that. What I would do, however, is sow this seed. And this seed is, I want you to buy in that location that, as you say, offers a better quality of life for our family. So find that location. Now, what I want you to do is have a look at the inner city areas and has it got the livability that you're looking for? Or find an area where there's a lot of gentrification and new building going on, but buy an old property. So buy something that's got owner-occupier appeal, but it's a little tired, but still reliable and durable to rent. So I would be saying, yes, we don't want lazy money. We don't want to keep saving up at a deposit. We've got enough. Let's go and buy that property as an investment property to start with. Let's rent it out. You know, it's like, oh, but I want a nice home when I get there. Good point. What I would model then is a consideration of having a buffer. So I would then try and work out whether I could get a loan for $50,000, $100,000, whatever, and I would cosmetically renovate that property
Just
before I moved in.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, we've made the decision, we're enjoying living in town, but the second child's on the way. Imagine knowing that you've got this lovely property that's been freshly painted, kitchen, bathrooms all done, en suites, maybe, reconfiguration of non-structural, and all of a sudden I'm moving in to what feels like a new property that doesn't have any memories of the tenants in there because I've been able to do that. Now, why is that advantageous for me? Well, at the moment, I'm obviously going to get whatever growth that happens over that time. I'm now equity harvesting in regards to I'm adding value.
Yep.
So I'm going to put added value into the property. If the property was negative gear at the start, I've also got a little bit of tax advantages in there as well. So overall, I'm now in a position where I've been able to get into the property market when the property market was moving and it didn't move beyond my reach. And I've got a plan. I've got a plan to basically get to where I want to get to. Now, everyone's circumstances is different. What was interesting about this one is that where they wanted to move into was affordable. The big challenge for the most people in this scenario is they want to just get on the property ladder, but they want to stay in the area that they're currently renting in, and then they want a beautiful home in that area. That requires a lot more modelling and a lot more sophistication, and that could be one where it's stepping ladder.
And the ugly duckling scenario allows them to upgrade location as well.
Correct.
So they get into a better location because it is the big rock in the jar, because it is their principal place of residence. They want to create memories there. So the better chance of getting the location is a thing you can't change.
It's a brilliant point, Bryce. It's a brilliant point because we love that idea. So if, let's say, the median house price in that location is $650 as you've got here, you really want the best houses in that area to be worth $800, $900, $1 million. And you want to get into that sort of slightly tired property, but you can see potential in it, in the best street you can possibly get into, and then you'll leverage from those other properties in that area and you'll get a better land to asset ratio and you'll be able to add value. And guess what? Once you've bedded into that property, you can then go back to the bank. Once your partner's income is more consistent and you're back on full-time work where you're going to be earning that 115, you're going shopping for your first investment property. It's your second one that you've bought, but now that you've converted the original investment property into an owner-occupied property, you're now going to start building out your portfolio, and you'll get a round of applause from me when you start doing that.
And of course, Ben, you'd want to set it up with money smart so that you are building the money in offset so that you're giving yourself choices if you want to upgrade at some point in the future as well.
Correct.
So, hey, I've got a dilemma here, Ben. On my notes, it says it's from Melanie.
Right.
And on the sign-off, it says it's either from Sarah or Sarah, and I don't know so shout out to Melanie and a shout out to Sarah.
Yes.
Hopefully,
we're not quite sure. So
hopefully we've answered your question, but let us know. Hey, that was awesome, Ben. I love doing Q&A day. I never get sick of it. Hey, my life hack
what
today.
What do you got for me, mate?
Before I do a life hack, someone's written into us. His name is Marco.
Right.
And he said, thanks for the lift life hack. Works a treat. Feel a bit guilty using it though. Now what I want to do is I want to do a community service announcement because I probably I'm probably feeling a bit guilty, Ben.
You should.
So I'm going to put a caveat on that life hack.
So I should.
I'm going to put a caveat on that life hack.
What's that?
If you are busting for the toilet, Ben, maybe you may consider using it. If you just want to jump the queue, I haven't probably served our community well by suggesting that one.
No, it was a bit fun though, but thank you, Marco, for saying it.
Marco. Hey, my life hack today is in the spirit of the festive season coming up here. If you're jumping on planes, Ben, if someone recently told us that they do the Christmas tree at this time of the year, and their ritual is to go and watch Home Alone as part of that ritual.
Yes.
And if you watch Home Alone, Ben, what happens? They leave Kevin behind.
Kev stays home and they're all rushing to the airport and leave him behind.
But let's hope you don't leave Kevin behind. But what happens if you're flying into Canada or Europe or Asia or something, and one of your bags gets left behind, Ben?
Oh.
My life hack is when you're packing,
that happened to me once.
Mix up the bags, right? 4 suitcases. Don't have one suitcase for each person. Actually have a bit of your stuff in each of them, Ben, because if one goes missing, someone doesn't get the booby prize. So if you're planning on flying somewhere for the holiday season, make sure to mix up your clothing between the suitcases. That way, if a bag gets lost or stolen, one person isn't totally out of luck. Ivis, you travel over the seas at Christmas time. That one's for you. Ben, did you know?
Did you know, Bryce? Well, I thought it's been a while since we've called on our friends at CoreLogic to just give us an update on the real estate data.
How much?
How much is the property portfolio of the country worth? So we're going there. As a bit of an update, remember it did peak at over 7 trillion.
Yep, so surely it must be 8 by now.
So no, we just got the data in from our good friends at CoreLogic up until October 2019. Real estate, how much, Bryce?
Wow, if it was 7 before, Ben, surely it's more than 7 now, Ben.
No, it's come back, remember, Bryce. It's come back, there we go. Very good. Okay, so it's $6.7 trillion of residential real estate in the country compared to superannuation, which is 2.9 trillion, against Australian listed stocks of 2 trillion. Mind you, the share market's at record highs. That just goes to show you how big the residential property market is, too big to fail. Commercial real estate.
How much for commercial, Ben?
$1 trillion, Bryce.
Okay.
Now, a bit of an update in terms of how many properties we've got. We keep building these things.
How many dwellings?
Dwelling count is now at 10.3 million.
Okay.
In terms of outstanding mortgage debt, Bryce, 1.8 trillion against 6.7 trillion. So LVR there, global LVR, 25 to 30, thereabouts. Household wealth held in housing, Bryce.
How much, Ben?
51.5% of household wealth is in our properties. For those who are always interested in terms of number of sales that occur, the count. So far we're talking about per annum. That's rolling out and out at 386 odd thousand properties are turned over each
and every year. Yes.
And the gross value of those sales,
come on, Ben, how much?
Has been $248.7 billion, Bryce. So there you go. Thanks to our good friends at CoreLogic for giving us their global snapshot of the residential real estate market. Leaders in data insights, our friends at CoreLogic.
Geez, they do a good job, Ben. No, I did not know that. Thank you for updating us. I've got a letter from a listener, Ben. Hi, Ben. It was nice to run into you yesterday, albeit briefly. I found this extract from the book Think and Grow Rich, which reiterates the sentiment behind your catchphrase of knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. Under the topic of the 30 major causes of failure, Ben, regarding education, Napoleon Hill writes in Think and Grow Rich, education consists not so much of knowledge, but of knowledge effectively and persistently applied, Ben. People are paid not merely for what they know, but more particularly for what they do with what they know. Ben, that book was written a very long time ago.
It was written a very, very long time ago.
And he's quoting you. How's that possible?
Oh, that's very kind of them to do that.
So folks, knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it. So I'm just going to reiterate the fact that our summer series is about this very thing that Napoleon Hill wrote about in Think and Grow Rich, about acting on it. So we've got a wonderful lineup of guests that are going to tell you how they did it, Ben, how they acted on it, how they overcame all of their insecurities and their not
nice
so
segue,
sure.
Bryce.
So next week starts summer series. Don't forget about Black Friday, Ben.
Yes, remember Black for your 30% off to start with, and then you've got bulk buying offers where there's more and more. We're just giving it away.
You're giving it away, folks. Go and get a free book. They're not going to be there for too much longer.
Free books.
Thearmchairguide.com.au, man.
Hey you.
Hey you. So
get onto it.
Ben, now as Napoleon Hill once said, Ben, until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
Don't miss the summer series, folks. We'll see you next week. Hey there, folks. Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listened to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarizes the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now, don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.